Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to your sleep story. I am Teresa Noy, your radical self-love coach. I work with high-achieving women who typically put themselves last to love themselves enough to put themselves first. You deserve to love, cherish, and honor yourself without guilt because your well-being matters. It gives me great joy to be the voice that guides you into a restful sleep tonight. You are so deeply loved. Your existence is the proof. Before we begin tonight's sleep story, let's start with a relaxation session. I'm going to count down from 10 to 1, and as I do, allow yourself to let go more and more. 10. Feel the support beneath you, the support of your bed, the floor, and the earth beneath. Imagine the warm sand of a beautiful beach cradling you, holding you with the earth's gentle strength. Allow that certainty, that solidity, to enable you to release a little more, to sink into this moment a bit more. 9. You are safe. All is well. Allow my voice to be a point of safety for you. Allow my voice to be an anchor that keeps you in a safe space. Know that my voice will only ever bring you into safe places. Feel into your body now. Notice where you might be holding tension. Maybe your feet, your hands, your face, or your belly. Just release it all. Your body has worked hard for you today. It's time for it to rest. It deserves rest. 8. Today is done. Whatever has been, has been. Whatever will be, will be. All you have is now. So thoughts about the day that just was, or days that are to come, don't serve you right now. Allow that realization to enable you to settle into this moment more. 7. This is your moment. You have nowhere to be, nowhere to go. The only place you need to be is here, enjoying this cozy sleep story and the sound of my voice. You deserve it. 6. You deserve it. You deserve rest. You deserve sleep. You deserve to be here. Allow that fact to help you let go a little more. 5. Perhaps allow yourself to feel a little gratitude now. Gratitude for this moment. Gratitude for the ability to rest. Gratitude for the simple things. Your breath, the shelter you have tonight, the opportunity to switch off in a place of safety. 4. Embrace the coziness of this moment, the coziness of lying down in a safe space, moving towards sleep in the beautiful act of storytelling. 3. Begin to engage with your imagine now. Engage with your imagination. Picture a beach in the Caribbean, a secluded spot on the beautiful island of Barbados. isolated from the rest of the world, or another favorite spot that you may have. Allow yourself to engage. Bring that picture to mind and check in with your body again. Make sure you're not holding tension anywhere. Release and allow yourself to sink a little deeper to completely let go now as I tell you tonight's sleep story. The Waterfall Writing Cabin. Chapter 1. She came not out of urgency, but out of a quiet longing she couldn't quite name. It had been whispering for weeks, soft as the rustle of silk in a still room, gentle as breath fogging a window on a winter morning. A nudge, not a command, not an escape. More like a leaning into something old and familiar, like opening a door to a part of herself she hadn't visited in a long time. And so, on a morning when the world was still stretching into the day, she arrived. The road that led her there was narrow and winding, the kind of road that slowed you down without asking. Trees arched overhead like cathedral beams, their branches thick with spring green leaves that dappled the light in patches of gold and shadow. The air was cool and soft like linen sheets pulled fresh from the line. She parked her car at the edge of the woods and stepped out, her shoes crunching lightly over gravel, her breath fogging in the early mountain air. And there it was, just a short path away, tucked behind wild rhododendrons and brush dotted with purple blooms. The cabin. It wasn't grand. That was its magic. Wooden, hand-built, and simple. It looked as if it had grown there, as if it belonged to the land, the way the moss belonged to the stones, or the fern to the creek bed. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, and a single rocking chair waited on the front porch, swaying slightly as if it had already anticipated her arrival. But the sound came first. Before she reached the steps, the sound of the waterfall reached into her chest and stilled something. It wasn't loud, not in the jarring sense. It was more like a low chorus, endless and grounding. The water tumbled in layers, thick and clear, over smooth rock faces beyond the cabin. It was the kind of sound that filled the spaces between thoughts, a lullaby not sung, but felt. She stood still and let it happen, let herself be undone in the most gentle way, like a knot loosened thread by thread. The key was under a smooth, flat stone by the front step, just like the directions had said. Inside, the cabin smelled faintly of cedar and orange peel. A fire crackled, slow and steady in the hearth. The floor creaked with a kind of contentment, and the window let in the kind of light that made you want to sit still for a long, long time. On a small table near the window, a journal lay open beside a mug of tea, still steaming. She hadn't left it there, but she was startled. Something about this place already felt like memory. She walked over slowly, drawn to the tea's warmth and the view beyond the glass. The waterfall glittered in the sunlight, surrounded by wild grasses swaying like dancers in rehearsal. There was no urgency, no performance, just rhythm, just being. She sat in the oversized armchair, with the wooden throw draped over the back, and tucked her legs under her. The tea tasted of chamomile and something floral, maybe hibiscus, and it warmed her chest in layers, the way a song sometimes builds in a room before you realize you're humming along. She opened the journal. The page was blank, but somehow it wasn't empty. She didn't write. Not yet. She didn't need to. She just stared at the page, letting the waterfall's music do the work of unwinding what had been too tightly wound. Thoughts softened, muscles loosened. Even the air seemed to slow. She could feel her inner world, once tight and efficient like a packed suitcase, begin to spill gently open. Ideas, memories, dreams, not demanding attention, just arriving, like old friends coming to sit with her in the stillness. And in that moment, she realized she hadn't come here to think harder or fix anything or even create something. She had come to listen to the waterfall, to the silence, to herself. And she was right on time. Chapter 2, The Stillness Between Words. She woke slowly the next morning, not because of an alarm, but because of the soft insistence of morning light spilling through linen curtains. It was the kind of light that didn't rush you. It lingered, like a hand on your shoulder, like a whisper that says, "You're safe here. You don't have to be anywhere else." The waterfall was still singing, just beyond the window. Its voice had shifted slightly in the morning air, less like a lullaby now, more like a hymn, steady, assured, a rhythm her breath began to match without effort. She stayed in bed for a long time, watching the way the light curled around the edge of the nightstand, pooled in the folds of the blanket, and danced faintly on the ceiling beams. She traced it with her eyes, like a child tracing clouds, not needing the light to mean anything, just letting it be beautiful. There was a kind of worship in that. Eventually, she rose. The floor greeted her with a soft creak. The cabin, like everything else in this place, was alive with gentleness. Nothing abrupt, no phone buzzing, no emails, just the slow stretch of a day that didn't need to be managed. She moved through her morning in reverence. Water from the kettle warmed her hands. A slice of bread became toast. Honey spread slowly with the back of a spoon glistened like amber in the sun. Even the simplest acts felt like rituals, mundane moments made holy because of the presence she brought to them. And then she returned to the chair by the window. The journal still sat there where she had left it, the page still blank. But something inside her was ready now, not to write a masterpiece or produce brilliance, but simply to say hello to herself. She picked up the pen and let it hover for a moment. There was no push, no pressure. She had spent years in a world of deadlines and goals, of polished presentations and polished personas. This wasn't that. This was different. This was presence, not performance. She wrote her first name like an offering, and then a word, another, then a sentence that didn't try too hard, but felt true. It was something small, maybe about the sound of the wind or the taste of the tea. She wasn't even sure. It didn't matter. What mattered was how it felt in her body. The way writing opened a space inside her chest she hadn't realized was closed. It felt like turning on a lamp in a dim room and realizing you'd been squinting, not straining anymore, not trying, just seeing. She paused between sentences, not because she was stuck, but because the stillness felt good. It held her like a warm shawl. Her thoughts became slow and soft, like feathers drifting down from a high place, and she caught them one by one with care. There was no need to rush. In fact, something inside her had shifted already. Her usual pace, sharp, quick, effective, had melted. Here, her thoughts moved like the stream below the waterfall, steady, reflective, following the curves of the land instead of carving new paths. And she realized this was the first time in a long time she wasn't trying to get anywhere, not trying to solve or fix or improve, not trying to win the morning or optimize the day. It was simply being. And the simplicity of it made her eyes sting just a little. Because this quiet, slow, unremarkable moment was more beautiful than anything she could have scheduled. Outside, a bird landed on the porch railing. Its feathers were the same color as the earthy sky, soft and gray with a faint shimmer of blue. It cocked its head, then let out a low, gentle call, almost like it was saying, "Yes, you're here now." And she was here, fully, gratefully, wonderfully here. Chapter 3, The Language of the Ordinary. Later that morning, after the tea had cooled and her hand had written its fill for now, she stepped outside. The air wrapped around her like a soft shawl, cool but not cold, fresh in the way that only places untouched by urgency can be. The scent of pine and damp moss lingered just beneath the surface of the breeze, and the earth beneath her feet was soft and giving, as if it welcomed her weight instead of resisting it. She didn't have a plan for the day. That, in itself, felt like a luxury. She walked slowly, not to get somewhere, but to be somewhere. Her feet found the path naturally, worn into the ground by time and quiet visits like this one. Leaves whispered underfoot. A squirrel darted along a branch, pausing to stare at her as if to say, "You've slowed down. Good." The waterfall was louder here, closer. She could see it now through a clearing in the trees, wide, flowing, silver like silk unraveling from the sky. It spilled over a ledge of dark stone and fell into a basin below, where the water churned and danced before continuing on its quiet journey downstream. She sat on a smooth boulder by the water's edge, pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, and listened. There are some sounds that don't fill the silence, but deepen it. The waterfall was like that. It didn't distract her from her thoughts, it helped her hear them. One floated forward now, simple, unassuming. What if I let life be easier? The thought drifted in as light as the mist off the water and settled in her chest. She didn't answer it. She didn't try to explain it away. She simply held it, turned it over like a stone in her hand, admired its shape. The truth was, she had become skilled at striving. It had brought her success, yes, but also a kind of weight she carried even in rest. Even when sitting still, her mind often raced ahead, calculating, arranging, doing. But here, right now, the rhythm of her life was being rewritten, not in grand declarations, not in transformation, not in tiny ordinary observations that shimmered like coins at the bottom of a clear stream. The sunlight catching in the droplets as they sprayed gently upward, the way the water carved curves into the rock, the way her breath slowed the longer she listened. It was beautiful, not in the curated social media sense of beauty, not in the kind you take photos of to prove something. This beauty was quiet, earned only by presence, the kind of beauty that lives in moments when no one is watching. She found herself smiling, not because something happened, but because nothing had to. It was strange, in the most wonderful way, how much clarity lived in the quiet, how much love lived in this kind of attention. Not romantic love or even self-love in the traditional sense, but the kind of love that says, you don't have to prove anything, you belong just like this. A breeze stirred the trees around her, and their branches moved in agreement. Leaves rustled with applause. A few fluttered down and landed near her feet, golden and papery. She watched them settle and thought, even falling can be graceful. A dragonfly buzzed past, skimming the water's surface like a skater tracing a pattern. She watched it for a long time until it disappeared downriver. And then she stood, not because she was finished, but because she was ready for the next slow moment, the next quiet discovery. She walked back to her cabin, slower still, letting the trail wind beneath her, letting time unravel. Inside, the light had shifted. It touched the wooden floor like watercolor, softer and more golden than before. She didn't rush to do anything. She just stood at the doorway for a long time, letting the beauty of the ordinary wrap around her like warm wind. Everything was still, but nothing was stuck. And in the hush, a soft truth formed inside her. This is not wasted time. Chapter 4, A Room of Her Own. The afternoon unfolded like a handwritten letter, slow, deliberate, and personal. She had made no to-do list, no schedule, no productivity app whispered reminders into her pocket. She didn't check the time. There was nothing to be on time for. There was only this, and this was enough. She wandered back into the cabin, her hand trailing along the doorway as if reacquainting herself with the texture of stillness. The warmth of the hearth had faded. but the sunlight now poured across the floor in golden slants, warming the wood like an invitation. There was a small alcove just past the kitchen, almost hidden, as if the house had grown it as a secret offering. It was only large enough for a desk, a chair, and a shelf of worn books. The desk was made of thick maple, soft to the touch, with a grain that curved and dipped like the lines of a gentle river. A glass vase sat near the edge with a single stem of something wild and purple. She sat. The chair creaked and then held her, solid, dependable. She exhaled as if the chair had asked her to. On the desk was another notebook. This one was older, with a cover that looked like it had known seasons and stories. She opened it slowly, expecting blank pages. Instead, she found pages filled with careful, looping handwriting, not hers. Each page was dated and signed with a first name she didn't recognize. Each entry a meditation, a musing, or a reflection. Some were no more than a paragraph, others meandered for pages, and all of them shared one thing: stillness. She began to read, letting each word enter her like soft light through an open curtain. I sat by the waterfall today, didn't write much, just watched a spider spin a web between two ferns. I wonder how often I've rushed past things like that. Another entry days later. I used to think silence meant nothing was happening, but it turns out silence is where everything begins to breathe. She closed the book after a while, holding it to her chest the way one might hold a memory or a prayer. Whoever had written those words had not tried to impress. There were no flourishes, no profound declarations, only truth, gentle and unpolished. And somehow reading them didn't make her feel like a visitor. It made her feel like part of a lineage. Women who had come to this space to exhale, to listen, to write not for the world, but for themselves. She pulled out her own journal again and wrote, I didn't know how hungry I was for quiet until I sat still enough to feel it. Outside, the sun had begun to dip behind the tallest trees. The waterfall's voice had softened again, now more like a hush than a hymn, the kind of sound that held the edge of evening in its arms. She made herself a cup of warm milk with a touch of honey and cinnamon. It smelled like childhood and grace. She carried it back to the writing nook and curled into the chair like a cat returning to its spot. There was a comfort in the repetition of things. Warm mug in hand, pen on paper, the gentle hum of water nearby, a sentence written, a breath taken, another sentence, a pause. She had built empires with her mind, solved problems in boardrooms, held space for others in conversations, decisions, transitions. And yet this quiet scribbling in a forgotten corner of the woods felt like its own kind of power. Not the power of control, but of connection, of allowing, of being so deeply in tune with herself that nothing needed to be proven. And when she finished writing for the day, she didn't close the book quickly or sharply. She rested her hand on the last word for a moment, felt the texture of it beneath her palm. Then she whispered aloud as if to herself or To whoever might be listening, thank you for this room, because that's what it was. A room not built with blueprints, but with permission. A room that didn't demand anything of her but her presence. A room of her own. Chapter 5. The Glow of Nothing Urgent. Evening arrived like a whispered blessing. There was no sudden shift, no dramatic signal, just a slow golden fading. The sky turned the color of ripe peaches and rose petals, and the light filtered through the trees like it had nowhere else to be. Everything glowed, not from within, but from being bathed in this last warmth of the day. She lit a candle, not because she needed it. There was still light enough to see, but because the act of lighting it felt sacred. A quiet way of marking this moment of saying, I am here, I am paying attention. The small flame flickered gently on the table, casting soft shadows on the wood grain, dancing over the walls as if the cabin was breathing with her. She stood barefoot in the center of the room and looked around. There wasn't much. The chair, the desk, the fire that waited to be kindled again. The bed already turned down with linens that smelled faintly of lavender and something deeper, like pine or cedar. But it was all enough, more than enough. And most surprising of all, she felt no pull to check anything. No phantom itch for her phone, no need to scroll or plan or reply. The outside world was quiet behind her, not shut out, just paused, like the earth holding its breath between seasons. She had thought she might feel lonely being here alone, but instead, what she felt was spaciousness. The kind that gently stretched her inner world until her body felt larger than the room, yet grounded inside it. She was filled with herself, not in the self-conscious way, but in the way a pitcher is filled with clear, cool water. Ready, simple, pure. She stepped outside again, this time with the candle in hand, and walked toward the edge of the clearing where the trees opened just enough to give her a full view of the stars beginning to emerge. The waterfall glowed in the moonlight, less silver now, more like pearl. Its sound had deepened with the darkness, a bass note in the symphony of light. Crickets had joined in, along with the occasional call of a distant owl, but nothing interrupted the calm. She sat in the grass, tucked her blanket around her shoulders, and looked up. One star, then another, and another, each one arriving without fanfare, yet somehow worthy of awe. She found herself whispering their arrival like greetings. Hello, and you, and you. There was something ancient about the way they shone, timeless and indifferent to success metrics in boxes or whether the laundry had been folded. She let herself feel small beneath them, not in a diminishing way, but in the way a child feels standing in front of a vast ocean, humbled, held. And for the first time in what felt like a very long time, she felt the fullness of nothing urgent. No next meeting, no one waiting, no deadline tapping her on the shoulder, just breath, just stars, just her. She didn't need to document it, didn't need to take a photo or make a note. This moment wasn't meant to be saved, it was meant to be lived. Her body relaxed into the grass. The candle's light flickered beside her, casting a soft halo around the space where she sat. She felt like part of the landscape now, not visiting, belonging. And somewhere deep in her bones, she knew this was not an escape. This was a return. Not to a place on a map, but to a rhythm inside her that had always been there, waiting. And as the stars multiplied overhead and the waterfall sang its endless lullaby, she whispered into the air, not as a question, not even as a prayer, but as a remembering. Nothing is missing. Chapter 6. The Quiet Return. Morning returned with the kind of light that doesn't wake you, but becomes you. It slipped in softly through the window, bathing the room in a golden hush, like warm breath on glass. No alarm, no urgency, just light and warmth and the waterfall's lullaby carrying through the floorboards like a familiar tune from childhood. She opened her eyes slowly. There was no resistance, no tug of unfinished task or mental checklist racing to greet her. Just a stillness so complete it felt like her breath belonged to the forest. She stayed there for a while, tucked beneath the blanket, watching the light make slow shapes on the ceiling, noticing the way it touched the wooden beams like fingertips grazing an old piano. Each beam a note, each note a memory she didn't need to name. She felt changed, though noticing nothing dramatic had happened. No breakthrough, no revelation, no mountain moved, only her. She had softened. She had remembered how to be. Later, as she dressed and folded the blanket one last time, she felt no rush to leave, even though she knew she would. Departure wasn't an ending, it was a carrying. She brewed one more cup of tea, this time peppermint, crisp, clean, like a fresh thought. She wrapped her hands around the mug and stepped out onto the porch. The air was brighter now, the forest in full conversation. Leaves rustled, birds exchanged morning updates. The waterfall gleamed with sunlight and familiarity. It no longer felt like something she had discovered. It felt like something that had always known her. She took out her journal one last time and wrote, "I am leaving full, not empty." The silence gave me back my voice, not the loud one I use for the world, the quiet one, the true one, the one I forgot I missed. She didn't try to sum it up. She didn't make a plan for how to keep this feeling or turn it into a project or a process. That was the old rhythm. This was a new one built on trust, not tension, on allowing, not achieving, on being, not branding. Before she left, she placed the journal with the others on the writing nook shelf, nestled beside the one she'd found days ago. It felt right to leave a piece of herself here, folded gently into the lineage of stillness, a continuation, a contribution, a quiet offering for whoever came next. Outside, the wind picked up softly, tugging at her sleeve like a child saying, "Come on." She smiled as she walked back down the trail, back to the gravel path where her car waited. She noticed the sound of the waterfall wasn't fading. Not really. It had entered her now. It had become part of her breath, her pace, her knowing. She carried it the way one carries a secret that doesn't need to be told, only lived. The road welcomed her again, winding through green and gold. She rolled down the window and let the wind tangle her hair, let the air touch her face like a mother's hand smoothing her brow. She didn't feel like she was going back. She felt like she was going forward, but differently, lighter, slower, truer. And as the cabin disappeared behind the trees, she whispered one last thank you. Not because the cabin had fixed her, but because it had reminded her she was never broken. She was just waiting for the stillness to speak. And now that it had, she knew she would listen wherever she went.